somebody to get LeVar Ball on the phone right now. Listen up here, you old bald-headed scallywag. Donald Trump did not have to help out your ghetto thieving son. He could have let him rot over there in China for 10 years. So you need to have some respect for the president. But nah, you want to be messy and petty to promote your whack ballers brand. You coming at Trump like you came at Michael Jordan to promote your whack shoes. Nobody wants to buy your ugly shoes, okay? But who was there to help out your son? Was Al Sharpton there? Nope. Was ESPN there? Nope. Was Black Lives Matter there? Nope. Donald Trump was there, so you need to be thanking him. And Donald Trump, listen to me, bro. The next time some ghetto fools go over to another country and they want to steal, don't intervene. Let them learn a lesson. Do not intervene.
Well, all right. Can you hear me now? Is this thing going to work today? Had a few hiccups out here this morning. I was noticing the rain gauge in the hallway, the garbage can, had a couple inches of water in it. So if you stumble across us this morning, welcome. We're up here on Mount Huth out here in East Linda, Yuba County, Northern California, or as they call it, the state of Jefferson, although somebody still stole my Jefferson banner in here that was given to me as a gift. It was actually the second theft. So you think you got problems out there with the politicians. We got enemies right in the radio station here. So we're here at 1410 AM, The Patriot, or they called it for years KMYC Radio. And we'll be here for 3 hours. The Wiki Man, Santos Vigil, and I, Lou Benninger. And you can listen to us just the way you are right now. Or if you're out there in a fringe area, out there in one of these several counties that we reach out into, and you think, oh, I wish I could listen to this easier, you can go on a stolen laptop and go to kmycradio.com. That's kmycradio.com, and just click on the Listen Live button. Or if you don't have time to listen today and you think, I'd like to listen to the rest of it, but I don't have time, or I got to mow the lawn, or I got to run a machine, I can't listen, you can go later, maybe half a day later, to One Eye Blind Media. That's on YouTube. Just click on YouTube and then go to One Eye Blind Media and click on Listening Lists. And you'll find Live with Lou, and you can listen to whatever show you want to check into whenever you want, and it'll be loud and clear. It'll be a little different on the commercials and music, bumper music. They have to change a few of those things to go on YouTube, but the text or the meat of the show is the same. So you can have at it. So you got lots of options, which we did that for you because of Chris Starkey with One Eye Blind Media, of his courtesy to do that. He does a great job and has made the show available to many, many more people. Let's see, if you want to call in, you can, 530-742-5555, 530-742-5555. Sometimes people call. We don't take the call because we're pro-choice, so we may have to abort a call if it's not convenient to my career, or if I don't feel good that day, or if you're the wrong gender at that point in time, or if we're on to another topic and I just don't have time to have a call right then, don't have time to deal with a call because it's on a wrong topic. So here we go. Well, we just finished Thanksgiving. I hope you had a good time during your Thanksgiving celebration. I thought it was seemed like a lot of extra energy this year around Thanksgiving. People were particularly up, and at least in the circles I run in, and so you're probably still eating some leftover turkey sandwiches, which is fun. I love turkey. But I wanted to spend a little time here in the first few minutes of the 3-hour show today. We're here from 9 to noon. And I want to spend some time talking about what happened to lead to this celebration called Thanksgiving, because it really is a snapshot of what's going on today. Today, we have a large group of people that are trying to overthrow this country and create a Marxist country. If you don't understand Marxism, Marxism, or communism or socialism, that's where the government runs everything. Centralized management. You lose your rights. You surrender your rights to the government in exchange for them to their promise to take care of you. It is what some people call a totalitarian government. In other words, the entire banana is run by the government. The people who came to this country from Europe wanted just the opposite. They wanted a country that was a free country where people could receive the just blessings from their own particular hard work. They wanted to worship freely. A lot of them that came initially were God worshipers, God followers. But like in any group or any movement, there's a mixture. Just like today, just like a guy asked me one day at church, he says, how come there are all these different churches? And so even in a movement, there are slightly different views and beliefs, even in a movement going in a different direction. And in a country, when you look at history, sometimes history books are too simple because they only have so many pages to tell the history of a country or a time in. They're not able to give you the perspective of, or feeling of what really happened during those times. So growing up and going to school here in Yuba County, you kind of got the perspective that these people decided to come from Europe, and some may have thought from England, and they showed up over here in around 1620, and they started this colony called Plymouth, and they were what we call pilgrims, and it was really tough on them, and they got a hand from the Indians, or what we call them a lot of different things nowadays, like indigenous people, Native Americans. And so we kind of had this meal together because it was very difficult, and the Indians kind of bailed us out, and it's called Thanksgiving because we were giving thanks for saving our life. Well, it didn't really happen that way. For instance, there was a struggle going on throughout Europe over how to worship God, and it involved Catholicism and then what we call the Protests or the Protestants. And at that time, the government, the political government, was actually mixed with the religious government. And so in the founding of what we call the New World, the Pope was very much involved in that. And so politics got mixed with religion. And so a lot of people didn't want that and didn't want government to tell them how they should worship, or didn't want the church involved in exploration and colonial conquest. So some people began to leave their country for a better life, and many went over to Holland. And for a while they spent time there, years. And then there was, as rumors, the rumor mill, because there was no CNN News or Fox News. The rumor mill was that explorers, because of better sailing devices and instruments, they could sail more safely, and there was exploration going on around the world, and there was a new world, a place that really hadn't been named yet, but they decided to go to this new place we now call America. And they came over on this Mayflower ship, but they had made an agreement, this group of people, on how they were going to do this. They just didn't jump on a plane and land in San Diego, right? And just say, then make a plan on what they're going to do. Like most of you, when you take a trip, you highly plan in detail the whole event. We're going to go to a ball game, going to go to the beach, going to go do this, go do that. So we're going to stay over here. We're going to get a good buy on this. Well, they did the same thing, and so they created a charter, the Plymouth Colony Charter, and it really wasn't what we have today in terms of freedom and free enterprise. It reflected, these people were followers of God, but it reflected the most up-to-date economic, philosophical, and religious thinking of the early 17th century, which for those in Oliverson, Linda, that means the 1600s. So even though they were church people, they were affected by secular society, and one of the big influences at that time was a philosopher from years gone by named Plato. Very popular. Plato believed in central planning by intellectuals. He believed they should have communal property, that people shouldn't own their own property. He believed that we should have centralized state education, which we have in the world, in the United States today. And when Plato said he believed in central planning by intellectuals in the context of communal property, more and more, particularly in the West, the federal government owns most of the property. Did you know that? You may have your house, but when you look at Nevada and a lot of these Western states, when they settled, the federal government ended up controlling that. The states turned it over to them. That's why you have all these problems with the Bundys and the Hammond families and all these ranchers that are being thrown off their property. For Plato, you remember a few years ago when Hillary Clinton wrote a book, It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. Well, Plato, that's Plato's philosophy. And you may think, well, yeah, I think, our extended families are good to raise children. That's not what this is about. This is about the government having more influence over your child than you. It's not about grandma and grandpa taking care of the kids while you go on a short vacation. So even though these people were Christians coming to the United States, what now we call the United States, they came to a country when they got off the boat, there wasn't a 7-Eleven, there wasn't any food laying around. They expected to just be very difficult. It was just raw space that they needed to carve out a living. So this collectivist or communal or socialist impulse reflected itself in various religious heresies. That means wrong teaching or wrong thinking, not biblical, of Protestant Christianity. So here, right in the original group coming over, there were these influences. There were offshoots from true Christianity called the True Levelers or the Diggers. They were mass movements of people who believed that property and income distinction should be eliminated. We should all live in common. And that the wealthy should have their property taken from them and given to what we now call the 99%. So you remember a few years ago we had the Occupy Wall Street and Occupy this and Occupy that. And remember they said that the 1%ers, we needed to take the wealth from the 1% and spread it to everybody else. That's communism, folks. So in the 1600s, this philosophy wasn't the dominant philosophy, but it was mixed in with all the other philosophies of the time. Just like if you read the paper today, there's this opinion and that opinion, this opinion and that opinion on the college campuses. They want to do socialism and Marxism, right? So the Pilgrims settled for a charter which did not include a private property system. I want you to think about that. I lived communally for 9 years. We took people in off the street after I got converted to Jesus. I got onto this Jesus thing, and so I thought it was pretty cool. We started telling people about it, and they wanted to move in with us, but we couldn't figure out how to support ourselves because no one knew how to do anything. We were all unskilled, and so we lived communally, all things in common, for 9 years. It was a very interesting experience, and we didn't do it because the Bible necessarily said to do it that way. We just did it to help people out, and we couldn't think much better than that, so that's what we did. Some things were pretty interesting and cool. Other things didn't work worth a darn. We are always broke. We're always poor. Some people worked a lot harder than others. Some people coasted. So what happened when the Pilgrims got here was they crashed. They crash landed. And this collectivist thing did not work. And more than a half of them, the first year or two, died. First, they died of starvation. And when you have a shortage of food and your immune system's weak, and you don't have really an infrastructure developed, pretty soon you get diseases like a plague going on, right? And it pretty much wiped them out. And so today we have the same thing going on in our country. We have people that want to have us all live in common, except the wealthy. They want the wealthy politicians. They want, it's kind of like some people are more equal than others. So they had a guy, the Pilgrims had a guy that led them in that first ship by the name of William Bradford. And all this is recorded. You ever hear them say, they'll learn something, supposedly scientists will learn something about, they'll find some fossil or something. They'll say, 20 million years ago or 5 million years ago, but none of them really know anyone that lived back there like Uncle Harry or anything. Well, in this case, in the 1600s, we actually have the documents that these folks operated by from the 1600s. Pretty cool, huh? So you can see like their mistakes. You can read how they thought, let's do it this way. So William Bradford recorded in his a writing called Of Plymouth Plantation, and he said, a people who had formerly been known for their virtue and hard work became lazy and unproductive. Interesting how we can change. We can formerly be hard workers, and then we get really flaky and lazy. Resources were squandered, vegetables were allowed to rot on the ground, and mass starvation resulted. And where there's starvation, there's plague. After 2.5 years, the leaders of the colony decided to abandon their socialist mandate. Remember, they came in and they determined that's how we're going to do this. We're going to live all in common. They dumped that socialist mandate and they created a system which honored private property. So what they found was that like women didn't want to do the laundry of people that didn't belong to them. They didn't want to do the guy's laundry down the way. And if they found, hey, if I worked really hard in the cornfield, I don't benefit any better from it than if I had worked not so hard. Like my friend Thuy Nguyen up in Hanoi, Vietnam, she said after the war, she was a youngster, and she said, Lou, after the Vietnam War ended in 1975, she was born after the war. She said, I said, how was it up here after the war? She said, we almost starved. She said, my mom and I collected insects to eat. And she said, people pretended to work when they were sent to the fields. Some people were sent to the fields. They'd never farmed before. They were just sent out there to work. And she said they pretended to work and the government pretended to pay us. So for many years, the story of the first failed commune in Plymouth Bay was part of the collective memory of American students. Now I want you to think about what you were taught in elementary and high school about the founding of this country by Europeans, and whether you ever heard the story of socialism failing until they launched free enterprise and private property. I don't ever remember that being taught to me. And I went to the local Marysville schools here in Yuba County. So, but what we've done here in this country is we've done Plato's philosophy. In other words, we have a government school system, and the government school system is socialist. And the government school system didn't find it helpful to tell that story on how having everything in common and everyone is just the same. They didn't find that helpful, so they just dropped that part from the story, and they just talked about the Pilgrims and some native folks and getting together and all helping one another, and et cetera, et cetera. So they just dropped that. That's called revising history. But what happened was the same things that I read earlier, is that many people didn't have any incentive to produce, because it didn't matter how little or how hard they worked, their benefits were just the same. It's just like with welfare. People get the same amount of welfare whether they go out and they really want a job or they don't want a job. They get the same amount of welfare. They get the same amount of welfare whether they're patriotic or not patriotic, whether they are good to their kids or not good to their kids, whether they'll go out in the street in front of their house and pick up the garbage, or they'll throw garbage in the street. They get the same amount of welfare. What they found in the Plymouth colony was that pretty soon there's a field out there that they'd cleared, but no one went out to till it because so-and-so, he called in sick that day. Oh, did you know that people call in sick in government when they're really not sick, but they collect pay anyway? Kind of like socialism, kind of like the Plymouth colony when they started out. You could call in sick, but you really weren't sick. You just wanted to sleep in bed because it was like cold that day or the wind was really blowing hard. You didn't want to go out and get behind that horse and till or hack at those clods. So what happened was fields went unplowed, unplanted, and corn went unpicked. They couldn't get it out of the field fast enough before the winter settled in because people didn't have the incentive to do that. So the thinking, even though these people were Christian people, and the Bible teaches hard work and taking care of your business and staying out of your neighbor's business and not groping the female's butt that you got your arm around, in spite of all that, the influence of philosophies on these people was significant. So what they did is they returned to the Ten Commandments, which were superior to the utopian speculations of people like Plato and other 17th century imitators. They found that human nature was a fact of life, and that fact is that we're self-centered and we're fallen. And no philosophers or kings could change the cold facts of reality. We still are dealing with fallen nature today. And what we found is that when people have their own property and they have some seed to plant, and that their survival depends upon putting that seed in the ground and fertilizing it and watering it and harvesting it before the rains hit, they get it done because there's no welfare. You know, something about self-preservation. It's not selfishness, it's self-preservation. When you know that nobody's covering for you or paying your way, you get the thing in gear. And you get out there and work, and you might even work past dark. In fact, I've worked in farming when we worked past dark. In fact, recently when they're harvesting rice, they harvest right through the night. You'll see harvesters out there with the headlights on all night, harvesting, because if you don't get the harvest in, you lose everything. All your work all year goes by the wayside. Well, the Pilgrims started out where it didn't matter how much hard you work, you're going to get some corn. Well, pretty soon they all starved. They all started starving. And so really the celebration of Thanksgiving doesn't so much even have to do with Europeans and Native Americans. It has everything to do with the Pilgrims coming to terms with what in the world they believed in and what worked and what didn't. And they experimented with going off the reservation, so to speak, philosophically, and trying some of that socialism stuff, and they got their nose broke. They got their nose broke in a bad way. And so Thanksgiving was really a time where they overcame. You know something? You do this all the time. You'll make a really stupid decision, and then you'll learn from it, and you think, I don't want to do that again because that cost me a lot. That cost me a relationship. That cost me money. That cost me a car. I lost that house. I lost that job. That was really stupid what I just did right there. And you learn from it. That's good. But what the Pilgrims learned is that if you give people money, regardless of their performance, what they do is the worst part of the gnarly part of our nature, the sinful part of our nature comes out, and that is to coast on a free ride. Well, we're going to go to a break right now. You're listening to Live with Lou, and we'll be back in a few minutes for another 2.5 long hours.
Bringing the term first responders.
Fellow community members stepping forward, volunteering their time to help others faced with what might be some of the most traumatic incidents in their lives.
It's called the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP. It's been used in communities across the United States for years, and its volunteers have been dispatched to provide what they call emotional first aid. A collaboration between police, paramedics, fire departments, and even hospital staff is making sure residents are emotionally taken care of in a time of crisis. Residents are volunteering their time with the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP, dispatched to the scene of a fire, accident, or death to focus on the emotional needs of those left behind.
It's just being there and being comforting, like a good friend or an extension of your family.
Ready to assist, sit, and listen to community members in a time of tragedy.
To learn more about the Trauma Intervention Program, visit yubasuttertip.org or call 673-9300.
Every leader and every associate of this criminal gang.
And MS-13, the cartel, has spread gruesome bloodshed throughout the United States. We've gotten a lot of them out of here. Big percentage, but the rest are coming. They'll be out of here quickly, right? Quickly. Good.
And I'll note as well, as we finish up fiscal year 17, HSI doubled the number of MS-13 arrests from the previous year in fiscal year 16, with almost 800 arrests of MS-13 members.
We're backing you up 100%. Remember that. 100%. It is the policy of this administration to dismantle, decimate, and eradicate MS-13 at every other, and I have to say, MS-13, that's a name, rough groups, that's fine. We got a lot of others. And they were all let in here over a relatively short period of time. Not during my period of time, believe me. But we're getting them out. To the great police, sheriffs, and ICE officers, you do a spectacular job. The country loves you. The country respects you. You don't hear it, but believe me, they respect you as much as they respect anything there is to respect about our country. You are spectacular people.
As we give thanks for our blessings this season, let us remember to be thankful for the liberty America enjoys, and be thankful for the ones with whom we enjoy it. John Adams, in a letter to Abigail in 1777, calls out to us. He says, "Posterity, you will never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it." Let's honor the sacrifice of our founding generation and those who carved out a land where liberty's streams might flow. Let us continue their effort of preserving and expanding liberty and strengthening its protections. Remember, our America's founders were neither divine nor perfect. They were flawed vessels just like you and me. Some like to highlight the flaws, but our nation was not founded upon people. It was founded upon principles they passed on. And one principle these flawed people understood is that the foundation of an enduring nation must be a liberty moored in virtue, a shared morality of mutual respect for person and property. So let us not be consumed by the flaws of the people who gave us this nation, but be stirred by the exceptional nation that they gave us. Let us not be divided by the differences between us and our neighbors, but rejoice that we have a liberty that all may enjoy if we practice virtue. We have an exceptional nation where all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. A nation birthed by the principle that the power of the government is to be held by the people and not where a government holds power over the people. A nation that believes the principle that says that all are free to worship according to the dictates of their conscience and all are equally free, Jews, Turks, pagans, and Christians. A nation that has prospered based on the principle that ideas and hard work open the door to prosperity regardless of bloodline, skin color, or social status. A nation that has remained free based on the principle that liberties remain secure by maintaining the right to defend life, liberty, and property. A nation that weathers unpopular speech so that truth and ideas are not extinguished. A nation that respects unpopular protest so that the voices that rouse our spirit to liberty and our awareness to oppression are not silenced. We must remain thankful for these principles and we must preserve them. We are America. We are blessed. We are free. We are thankful. Happy Thanksgiving, America, and may God continue to bless this exceptional nation.
All right. Welcome back. You're listening to Lou Benninger Live with Lou. And one of the groups in our area, and you can find them throughout the United States, that wants to preserve the philosophies and the bedrock foundation of our Constitution is the Tea Party. And they are a supporter of this show. They help pay the cost to be on the air. It's called the Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots, and they meet over in Yuba City on the first and third Monday nights of the month. The next spot is December 4. They meet at Church of Glad Tidings campus at Highway 99 at Eager Road, or 1179 Eager Road if you want the number. And they begin their meeting at 6:30. You can get there at 6. Doors open. They have some light refreshments, and you don't need to be involved with them or a member. They're totally open to all kinds of folks want to pop in. They have a really interesting speaker this coming December 4th, Monday. Not this Monday, but the next Monday. Jeremy Talcott. He's an attorney from Sacramento. He works with the Pacific Legal Foundation. It's an organization that has argued before the Supreme Court many times and won. He's going to be talking about property rights, which we just got done talking about at the last half hour about some of the folks that got here from Europe. And they thought, oh, well, let's just have all things in common. And then they realized that didn't work. In fact, it was a disaster. In fact, people died. They suffered. It was a complete collapse, just like you'll see in Venezuela today. If you want to just Google Venezuela, or you can Google Cuba or the Soviet Union or communist China before they went capitalistic, and you'll see a collapse in every one. People starved to death. So he's going to be talking about property rights and why they're important. You may have grown up thinking, oh, I'm going to buy me a piece of property. But your property rights extend to a lot more than just a piece of ground or a house. In fact, if you want to see how far we've gotten from our property rights, it's almost when government controls things, then what they give you is privileges, not rights. Government does not give rights. Those rights, our rights come from God, right? Government giving you an okay to do something is a privilege. So when you look at how much government has got their fingers into your property, they charge you for it every year, right? You pay property taxes. Anytime you want to do something with your property, you have to check with government. You have to pay government. In fact, a farmer up here in Tehama County had to pay over $1 million because he decided to plow his field to plant wheat, and Obama had said it was a wetland, and it wasn't a wetland. And so what we've seen here is an erosion of true property rights where government really allows you to be on your property, have it in your name, but they keep telling you every move you can or cannot make. In fact, Andy Vasquez and Mike Leahy, supervisors of Yuba County, in the previous show were saying the reason that housing isn't being built here is because of the egregious fees, development fees. In fact, my next door neighbor who's renting a house next door said she's moving. She's going to buy a house, and she's not going to buy in Yuba and Sutter counties because it's cheaper to buy in the Oroville area. These things affect our economy, these choices. So this coming, not this coming, but this next meeting for December 4 for the Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots, you're going to hear an expert talk about property rights, and so you should go check it out. The reason we're in such a state today in the United States is because we have ignorant people. When the school system quits teaching us about our heritage and about the Constitution and spends more time teaching about homosexuality, transsexuality, Islam, etc., we end up kids that are stupid. And they think, oh, I think it's a better thing to do is to have socialism, right? So they're also doing a raffle out there. You can buy raffle tickets, and they're going to auction off ammo, which I like. All kinds of ammo. So get involved in that. If you want to check in at the Tea Party and see what they're up to, you can go to their website. There's a number of ways, number of addresses, but the easiest one is SB, like in boy, TPP.org. SBTPP.org, and you can check it out over there. I also want to mention that Elite Security, if you want to, if you feel like, hey, the police aren't covering me good enough in protecting my house or my business, you need a little extra help over there, you can hire Elite Security, and they will help you secure your stuff, your property, right? Because there's people out there want to steal your property, right? They don't want to work to get theirs, but they want to take yours. So Elite Security, or what they formerly are called Elite Universal Security, their actually home is Yuba County, but they're operating out of Chico and Redding. And you can reach them at 749-0280 if you need somebody to kind of patrol your operation and keep people out of your stuff when you're gone. That would be the place. The other thing they do is they have what they call the API Academy. And if you're like, all you have to be is 18 years of age, and you can start taking courses out there in firearms training, CCW training, pepper spray, handcuffing, taser certified training, de-escalation force training, annual security card training. You can learn how to be a security guard out there. You can get the basic classes to start working your way towards law enforcement if that's of interest to you. And so you can call that number as well that I gave you, 749-0280. If you want to like nose around like a lot of people do nowadays, you can go to their website, and that is elite, ELITE.API -academy. Just the hyphen, not underscore, but hyphen.com. elite.api-academy.com. Elite Security. They helped me over in my neighborhood because we got lots of characters running around over there pushing CVS carts, stashing them behind my house, on the side of my house, up to foolishness. And so check it out. Those are people, what they do is we pay to be on the radio here. They don't pay me to do this. I got to pay to do it, like adding insult to injury. So folks, they want me to be here, so they say, Lou, we'll help you. So these guys are some of them. The others, you'll hear their advertisements on the radio here. Greenitz Construction. By the way, Greenitz Construction got a great website, DaveGreenitzConstruction.com. Amazing website. He just redid the whole website. I thought, oh, this is very good. I checked it out this week. And then also the Plumbing Doctor, so you can check them out as well. I guess everybody must be aware of all this sexual foolishness that men are perpetrating on females. And it involves every walk of life, from private industry to politics to Hollywood. And I get a kick out of it because a lot of them, it's not that conservative guys don't have a sinful nature, but that a lot of these guys are these Democrats who accuse the Republicans and the conservatives of a war on women. Remember that war on women thing? But yet all along, they've been molesting women and intimidating women and assaulting women and raping women. All the while, all these liberal women kept their mouth shut. And I can understand it when you're like a legislative aide or working on the staff of one of these senators or assemblymen, and you think, well, yeah, I can understand feeling nobody's going to believe me, right? Or I'm too intimidated. Well, I got a child to support, right? What if they fire me? I lose my job. Who will hire me, right? So there's a lot of those issues that come into play on sexual harassment. But this guy, these people down in the Democratic legislature of Sacramento are something else. 6 women have accused Democrat Raul Bocanegra of sexual harassment. In other words, they started accusing Raul over 10 years ago when he was on the staff of another assemblyman. And they actually gave him a warning. That's all they did to him back in the day. They disciplined him in 2009. And then these 6 women have come forward recently saying that after 2009, after they disciplined him, the disciplining didn't do any good. Oh, Raul, he just had the hots for all the women. He thought, hey, if I'm going to get paid over $100,000 a year. And did you know, let me just tell you, that right now these folks down in Sacramento, they're making at least $107,000 a year and change, and then they get another $183 a day per diem. That adds up to about $40,000 a year just in what I call tuna sandwich and hot coffee money. And then that isn't enough for them. They could go out and hire their own prostitute, right? You can pay for a woman to have sex with you. Did you know that? But instead, they want it for free, and they just want to grab it. I'll take some of that. Just like the guy that stole the shoes right off my front porch says, I'll just have those shoes. Said those shoes, he may have paid for them, but now they're mine. And Raul, he'd been messing with women. And so you know what? His roommate, a lot of these guys share apartments down there because they're not all from Sacramento. They come into town and hang out for a few days and do their business. So he's been hanging out with old Kevin De Leon, one of the top guys down there in the Senate. So this one lady said, Raul grabbed me with one hand, grabbed my head, and shoved his tongue into my mouth. I thought, oh. With his other hand, he put it up my dress. Well, that's a bad sign right there when you've got a guy that's wanting to be an example for all of us and a leader. And then he says, I put my hand down to stop him from trying to grab at my crotch. For those out in Olivehurst and Linda, that's between the legs. After the allegations became public, Mr. Bocanegra announced Monday that he would resign next year. Now, this is amazing when these guys are so powerful, women come forward, he assaults them. Now, if one of my kids in juvenile hall did that, they'd have him locked up for months immediately, and he'd be waiting trial, and they'd be going back and forth and have a one court date after another court date after another court date, and he'd have a public pretender taking care of him. But old Bocanegra, after he's disciplined in 2009, all these women come forward, he says, I think I may not run next year. That's the best he gets from it. Amazing. Sal, so here's the deal. This is so disgusting. It says the increase in sexual harassment. Did you know that 140 women, last I counted, 140 women that work down there in that California legislature signed a letter saying that all of them had been assaulted, harassed, intimidated, shamed sexually. So here, this is too much. Because of this, the legislatures and the state assembly legislators announced in October that their body would hold public hearings. Well, God bless those boys and girls. They're going to hold hearings on sexual harassment in the wake of the Harvey Weinstein scandal in Hollywood. Now, if you were sleeping or under the influence of OxyContin for the last couple of months, Harvey Weinstein, one of the most successful and powerful guys in Hollywood, if you wanted to be in his film, you had to have sex with him. Did you know that? And he just wanted to have sex with any woman that if he was in a hotel and the lady came in to clean, instead of giving her a tip, be kind to her because she didn't make very much money, he wanted to grab her crotch. That's Harvey Weinstein. Now, isn't it interesting that these guys will want to play moral superstar over the population and tell us how we need to be tolerant of homosexuals and transsexuals, and how we need to teach our kids about homosexuality and transsexuality in the classroom, how it's really normal, and how if they really thought about it, maybe they're homosexual. And lecture us on bullying. I want you to think about this. Do you know how much time we spend teaching kids about bullying in school? And what bigger bullies are there than a legislator who has a lot of power and is working with 19, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old young women and young men, impressionable, wanting to maybe get a job at the legislature, and taking advantage of them sexually? What bigger bullies than that? And, oh, yeah, we're going to, arrest bullies down in the public school. If a boy, he's 8 years old, he kisses a little girl, he thinks she's cute in class, oh, we're going to throw that dude right out of school. But Boca Negra, he isn't going to go anywhere until he decides to go somewhere. So isn't it interesting? They're going to have hearings. Now, this is the same legislature. I was talking last week about this. This is the same legislature that thought that the pedophile, Harvey Milk, who was once a supervisor in San Francisco and was considered not really the mayor, but euphemistically the mayor of Castro Street, where homosexuals hang out. They're the ones that declared and voted that we want to teach our kids in public education what a wonderful guy that Harvey Milk was, and we're celebrating his good works. And he was always screwing 15-year-old boys. I want you to think about that for a minute. Now, these very guys are going to hold hearings to try to root out the evil on all these gentlemen that are grabbing and doing all manner of evil to women against their will. I don't know. That doesn't work for me. First, they want to have bathrooms where you can choose what flavor you are to go into them, and you can mix. You can have boys that pretend they're girls. You can have them in a women's shower room and locker room in high school, and you can have transsexuals roaming around doing weird stuff. And if you teach that heterosexual is normal, then you're actually got a hate crime going, hate speech. So we've got all this hate speech and bullying, but down there in the Capitol, they're molesting all the women. And they're probably molesting some young men, too, because some of those guys are perverts down there. Did you know that? Some of those dudes are just flat-out perverts. And some of the women as well. So they make rules for us down here off the high mountain peaks where they judge from. We're down in the valley. You know, we have to live out the rules. See, this is true socialism where they create rules they don't live by, but they want you to live by them. And they create a lot of rules like hate crimes. By the way, did you ever commit a crime against somebody and love them? This is the most crazy thing. It's like, oh, well, if you killed the guy or you cut off his hand and you didn't have kind thoughts for him, then it's a hate crime. Anyway, pretty interesting. Now we got this Al Franken. Oh, we're almost there? Okay, we got a couple of minutes. I want to talk about Al Franken. Now, Al Franken was a comedian. He used to be a writer for Saturday Night Live. And then he went into politics, and they stole that election up there in his state. And Al Franken, all of a sudden, he's kind of a big shot now. You know, he's been in there long enough where the Democrats, they're freaking out because he's in some really powerful positions in the Senate. And women are lining up to tell how he grabbed their breasts, grabbed their butt, and they're trying to figure out what we're going to do with this guy because we don't really want to do what should happen to him because he's in too powerful position, and we'd rather sacrifice some women that have been molested than we do our political power. So this is after a number of women have come forward now. And so he said, this is his, these guys' excuses. Let me just say, Franken, a Democrat, he said that he feels terrible that he made some women feel badly. I wonder if all rapists and molesters say that after they say, darn, you didn't enjoy this? Unbelievable. This guy and Weinstein and these people and Bocanegra, they need to be taken out back and rubber hosed and just beat to a pulp and then tied to a pole and then tortured. He said, I can't remember all the women I've met in my life. I met tens of thousands of people and taken thousands of photographs of people, and just because my hand grabbed her butt and held onto it during the photographic, where they kept taking one picture after another, and I kept grabbing her butt and holding onto it, and I can't remember all those times. Often they were crowds, people were, it's like Jesus when he said, I don't know who touched me. Who touched me? I don't know. Somebody grabbed the hem of my garment. He said, All right.
I won't take a knee.
Well, before the break, we were talking about Senator Al Franken from Minnesota. I want you to just think about what he's accused of, and I want you to think of a 5-year-old boy or a 10-year-old boy doing this to girls on an elementary school campus, and I want you to ponder what would happen to that fella. Franken, a Democrat, said that he feels terrible that he made some women feel badly. Now, that, to me, that works if you farted in front of a woman, right? Or if you got drunk where you took her to an event and made a fool of yourself. Or you didn't take a shower and you smell bad. Or you didn't control your mouth and said something that embarrassed her in front of somebody else. Now that fits. He feels terrible that he made some women feel badly. And then he says, I've met tens of thousands of people and taken thousands of photographs. Now, and he said, often in crowded and chaotic conditions. He said, really, I'm a warm person and I like to hug. And he said, I've learned from recent stories that in some of these encounters, I crossed a line for some women. In other words, it was crowded, it was hot, there were people pushing against everybody, and they wanted to take a picture, and somehow the only place to put my hand was on her butt. And then I massaged her a little bit. So he said, I guess I crossed a line, and I know that any number is too many. In other words, lines. He crossed the line a number of times, and that's too many. So the First Lady said that he was taking a photo with her at the State Fair in 2010, and when he was kind of had his arm around the back of her, instead of putting it on her back or her waist, he went down and just grabbed her butt during the whole event. He says, some women have found my greetings or embraces for a long hug or photo inappropriate. Now, what they're specifically saying is that he either grabbed their breasts or their butt. I want you to think about that. The guy is a molester. The guy belongs in jail. He doesn't belong in the Senate. He doesn't belong in his hometown writing copy for Saturday Night Live. He belongs in jail. Anybody else, if I did that, I'd get myself in jail. A 10-year-old boy would get himself out of school, and he'd have to be put on meds and see a psychiatrist for some kind of mental disability he has. Franken says, I've thought a lot in recent days about how all this could happen. In other words, how did my hand get on all those butts? I just can't, I can't figure out how that would, I mean, I had a lot of options. I had around the shoulders, the back, the high, upper back, lower back. I could have just grabbed the side of her arm and got next to her. How did my hand always get on her butt? He said, I've thought a lot in recent days about how all this could happen and recognize that I need to be much more careful and sensitive in these situations. I think, sensitive? We just slap your face. Jack slap you, dude? Sensitive? That people don't want to be molested? He says, I feel terribly. Now, this excuse is good for Democrats. They like gobble this stuff up. Like, oh, yeah, well, he's very, well, yes, he's remorseful. I feel terribly that I made some women feel badly, and for that I am sorry. In other words, you feel some women were feeling bad, some weren't. It's just like, well, I didn't know you wouldn't like that. Said, I want to make sure this never happens again. Maybe we should go with the sensitivity training on keep your hands off the butts and the boobs. Let me say again to Minnesotans that I'm sorry for putting them through this. Oh, yeah, he's like, all of them are just horrified. And I'm committed to regaining their trust. In other words, I won't grab your butt if you'll take a photograph with me. Is this unbelievable or what? And all these people now, they're starting to talk about Clinton now. Oh, well, maybe he should have resigned. Maybe he should have been removed from office. I like this, Linda Tripp. Do you remember her? Linda Tripp is the lady who, she was the one who let it out about Monica Lewinsky. And basically, she lost her job and everything. She was the whistleblower, right? And the people wonder why people won't come forward when illegal things are done in government or wherever else. Linda Tripp was a career bureaucrat in the White House, not either Democrat or Republican. She was a career worker there. And Monica Lewinsky was an intern. And both of them fell out of favor with working around the White House. I think probably Hillary kicked them to the basement of the Pentagon, and they became friends. But it was during that time that Monica Lewinsky confided in Linda Tripp, who was kind of a mother figure to her, and confided to her about what had happened numerous times with Bill Clinton sexually. So it's interesting. Bill Clinton, who raped women, assaulted women, groped women, grabbed women, pulled down his pants in front of women. No charges against this guy, right? No charges. The media doesn't actually protected him during all those years. But if you did that in Marysville, Yuba City, you may get yourself arrested. Now, I want you to think about that when you have a government that does not live by the laws of the land. They don't live by the laws. It just doesn't seem right, does it? So we'll see what happens with all these people. There's literally now been hundreds, no exaggeration, of people in Hollywood, private industry. I think the president of I can't remember, was it one of the top executives at Amazon.com had to resign? Not Bezos, but one of the top people. People are resigning left and right, dropping out of things, apologizing left and right. It's unbelievable. Well, we'll see what happens with Franken. Now, it's interesting how, you remember the big deal? They had all kinds of things they were accusing Trump of, right? When he was running for office. But as soon as he finished the election, whether he would have won or lost, no lawsuits, right? You would think if a person was serious about it, they'd bring some kind of civil action against him. But nothing happened on that. But the Democrats were hard on that whole case. But now on all these things, they're like giving Franken the benefit of the doubt. Now, I was at the Training Zone gym yesterday. I was watching television because I don't have one hooked up at the house. And they had a guy, Richard Blumenthal. You know Richard Blumenthal? This is so disgusting. Just like the very people that are going to investigate Raul Bocanegra and all these other characters down there at the state capitol, the very people that gave us Harvey Milk Day on May 22nd, where we have to have our kids celebrate a pedophile. And so, who is on the House Judiciary Committee totally shocked at Al Franken's behavior and other people that are probably going to have to come forward? Richard Blumenthal is saying we're going to have hearings. Now, you know who Richard Blumenthal is? I believe he's the senator, I think it's for Connecticut. And when Richard Blumenthal, I want you to think about this for a minute. Would you marry somebody that's a liar? You couldn't trust. Why would you elect a senator that has a massive responsibility for the defense of this country? Huge responsibility. There's only 100 of these guys and gals in the United States of America, serving 330 million people. Richard Blumenthal, when he ran for office, he claimed he was a Vietnam vet. Pretty significant thing. When somebody says they're a World War II or Vietnam vet or Afghan and Iraq vet, they saw, in other words, they just weren't in the military, they saw action, right? Pretty significant. You know he lied about that? He never was in Vietnam. And the people elected the dude anyway. You know something, sometimes, folks, we get exactly what we deserve. This Richard Blumenthal, who is a proven liar to get his way, is the one going to investigate Al Franken. Now, hold that thought for a minute. How good do you feel about that? That's like these crooked judges, right? That are making decisions over things. Let me see if I can find this really quick. I got to get down there to this other character that's a big liar. Judge Orrick, William Orrick. His dad was a judge, and Orrick was a little prostitute for Barack Obama. He ran around raising money for Barack. He donated $34,000 to his campaign. Then he raised another $200,000. They call them bundlers, where you go out and you hustle money and people, you put it all together and donate it. And so he was a bundler. for Barack Obama. And so in return for that, Barack appointed him to his Mr. Oreck's his dad's seat on the U.S. District Court, Judge William Oreck III. So basically what's happened is before Barack Obama left office, it isn't like a lot of these presidents where they served and then they slipped into somewhat obscurity back in the old days, right? Nowadays, they can't resist being in the limelight like Clinton and now Barack. Well, what Barack did was more insidious. What he did is he appointed, basically these high-powered lawyers and low-level judges, if they got some DNA on Barack's ass, then he would appoint them to a higher position. Essentially, you know how when you put some people, when they get in trouble, they go hire an attorney, right? Or when they have a need, they hire an attorney. Other people, they keep an attorney on retainer because they use them so often, right? So essentially, Barack, before he left office, appointed all these guys and gals that were groupies to him, and they owed him. And so he put them in these positions, and it's kind of like having a judge on retainer. So whenever he needs it, he makes a call to them, like when Trump went in and he said, listen, we're going to put these several countries on a terrorist watch, and we're going to highly screen who's coming in. And so Barack got the Hawaiian judge to say, no, you can't do that. So that judge made 2 or 3 rulings before finally the Supreme Court says you're out of line. But he was just a little, I don't know whether Barack and him were having sex together, but anyway, they were buddies. I think they went to school together, and I think, you never know, Barack was going both ways all along the line. So now William Oreck, he was a bundler, and so a while back, his wife has been, and Oreck as well, are big Planned Parenthood fans. So when that underground medical reporter caught Planned Parenthood selling baby body parts, Oreck filed an injunction against, you'd think somebody that's doing something illegal, you're not supposed to do that, sell babies' body parts, right? You're not supposed to be able to buy and sell human body parts like that. Instead of going after Planned Parenthood, Oreck and Kamala Harris, who was Attorney General, both went after these reporters that didn't do anything wrong, but they exposed a criminal deed. So Oreck now, he has blocked President Trump's cutting off of certain funds, not all funds, but discretionary grants to law enforcement agencies in sanctuary cities. So William Oreck, who's down here in the Bay Area, the San Francisco and Santa Clara County challenged this order from Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, and Oreck blocked the money restrictions on the grounds that it was too broad and infringed on the powers of the legislative branch, But what it was, this isn't going to hold up, but what it was just he's doing his bidding for Barack Obama. Now, Ralph Nader started a liberal group called Public Citizen, and they reported that Oreck raised $200,000 for Barack and donated over $30,000 to committees supporting his campaign. And in 2004, Oreck also bundled $100,000 for John Kerry's failed presidential campaign. And so in return for all that, in 2013, Oreck was appointed to this wonderful spot on the bench. So I want to get down here to talk about his wife, who is a real winner. So Oreck's wife, Carolyn, operates as a clown and an artist with an interest in outdoor athletic endeavors. She partners with her husband in the political decisions and in their political decisions, and she is his co-bundler, according to Public Citizens. Now, this is a liberal group. She's also a big supporter of extreme abortion policy. What is extreme abortion policy? That means if you can ever find any little person living in a woman, you can kill them throughout 9 months of the pregnancy. And even when they poke their head out, you can stab them in the back of the neck, which is called a partial birth abortion. She loves it. She's never met a baby she couldn't find a reason to kill. That's what that's all about. So she's even against the Little Sisters of the Poor having an objection to them being forced to provide abortions. If you can find all this on her Facebook page. That's where all this isn't like guessing. It's just like, you know how you can check out people on their Facebook and say, oh, I didn't know that person was into that. So Mrs. Orrick is a huge supporter and actually served on boards for Planned Parenthood. She defends harvesting organs from aborted babies. Did you know that the Chinese eat portions of babies? I know you think I'm crazy, but you just don't know what I know. That's all you don't know. You don't know what I know. So Chinese eat aborted babies, parts of them. I always said the Chinese will eat anything that moves. So, and some things that don't move. Did you also know, by the way, if you will look up The Slaughter, it's a great book by Gutman, Guttman. You will get the hair standing up on the back of your neck if you ever want to go to China, because like these young African-American athletes that got arrested over there, and then people mocked like, oh, President Trump, he didn't really do anything. If President Trump wouldn't have done anything and come back and left those boys, all hell would have broke loose. So it doesn't matter whether Trump cures cancer or not. He's damned either way. So in China, if you need listen, any of you out there that drank so much that now your kidney's gone or your liver's gone or you got problems, I'm telling you, don't wait around here in America for one. You can just order one in China and go over there, and they'll pick you a prisoner. That's a DNA match. They'll knock the prisoner in the head, take the organ, and then kill him and let his folks know on the outside that he passed. If you think I'm confused on that, there's plenty of information, but you don't see it in the mainline newspapers because it doesn't show kindly on communism. So anyway, she is for harvesting organs from aborted babies. It's the very topic that Judge Orrick put the kibosh on the medical reporters that caught Planned Parenthood breaking the law. Now, you would think judges would be interested in upholding the law. But I'm telling you that Barack Obama has appointed people that are about an agenda. It's not about the law. So what you have is criminal judges, right? The Bible talks about that. The Bible talks about a time in Israel where judges were corrupt. And what we have today are lots of corrupt judges, not all of them, but there's a bunch of them because Obama put them in there not to judge righteously according to the Constitution, but they just think about it for a while. That has nothing to do with the law of the Constitution. They think, oh, I think a woman ought to have a right to abort her baby, and we should be able to sell the parts, and we should be able to do whatever we want, right? Anyway, Carolyn Orrick, that's her name. And these people, you would think a judge would be impartial and say, listen, my wife and I have been big supporters on Planned Parenthood. We've served on boards. We believe in partial birth abortion. We believe in this. We believe in that. And therefore, I'm going to recuse myself out in Oliver Live. That means I'm going to take a bye on this case. I'm not going to rule on this case because we have strong feelings towards that, and I can't separate my feelings from the law. But with Obama, the Constitution was irrelevant to him. It was just something that got in his way, and that's the way it is with these judges. So what you have is judges that do not judge righteously, and so they should be removed. And Orrick is just a little prostitute. All these judges are on retainer for Barack Obama. We're going to come right back, and then we got a half a show yet to do, an hour and a half.
Bringing new meaning to the term first responders.
Fellow community members stepping forward, volunteering their time to help others faced with what might be some of the most traumatic incidents in their lives.
It's called the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP. It's been used in communities across the United States for years, and its volunteers have been dispatched to provide what they call emotional first aid. A collaboration between police, paramedics, fire departments, and even hospital staff is making sure residents are emotionally taken care of in a time of crisis. Residents are volunteering their time with the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP, dispatched to the scene of a fire, accident, or death to focus on the emotional needs of those left behind.
It's just being there and being comforting, like a good friend or an extension of your family.
Ready to assist, sit, and listen to community members in a time of tragedy.
To learn more about the Trauma Intervention Program, visit yubasuttertip.org or call 673-9300.
Building a wall is just half the battle. Veteran ranchers have long told government officials they need boots on the ground.
The reality is, unless you put agents up here, no matter what you have, it ain't going to work.
So in other words, when we talk about building the wall, it's manpower.
Yep.
It is infrastructure, some sort of physical obstruction, plus technology, plus the will to enforce and prosecute people when they are caught.
Just put the enforce the law first.
There you go.
Just enforce the law. That's a common mantra I hear from all the ranchers down in Arizona. John, along with his neighbors Fred and Peggy Davis, make an annual trip to Washington, D.C. to attend the Federation for American Immigration Reform's Hold Their Feet to the Fire conference. This conference is a valuable outlet for ranchers, Border Patrol, and law enforcement to hold their lawmakers' feet to the fire when it comes to protecting our borders.
Okay, it's time for final thoughts and breaking news. Trump tweets and the mainstream media falls all over itself. Imagine that. Well, it all started when 3 UCLA basketball players decided to steal designer sunglasses from a Louis Vuitton store while their team was in China. Now, that's just pathetic on its own, but instead of rotting in a Chinese prison, they're back in cushy California. How? Donald Trump is how. But the basketball equivalent of a Kardashian/Father of the Year, LeVar Ball, didn't see it that way. See, LeVar Ball doesn't seem to think Donald Trump was much of a help, and LeVar Ball also doesn't think shoplifting is a big deal. Well, Mr. Ball, maybe not in cushy California, but in China, it is. I guess LeVar Ball is not familiar with the case of Otto Warmbier, an American student in North Korea who was tortured and later died after being detained on charges that he tried to steal a poster from his hotel. Mr. Ball, your klepto kid doesn't have to worry about that because Donald Trump personally stepped in and made sure he got home. I know it would absolutely kill you to give the president some credit, but he saved your son's butt, so just a little bit of gratitude would be awesome. But I guess that's too much to ask, though, right? This is just another instance in a series of BS where Donald Trump is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Can you imagine what they would have said if Trump hadn't stepped in? Oh, the race car would have been slapped down so hard our ears would still be ringing. But he did, and y'all are still not happy, and you're still slapping down the race card. Why? Because Trump sent off another mean tweet. Get over it. It's a freaking tweet. What are you going to do about it? Scream at the sky again? Make a sign and stand outside of Trump Tower during traditional working hours again? Wear a dumb hat and resist again? Go for it. His tweets offend you. We get it. It's not presidential. We get it. Well, here's the cold, hard truth. We had a presidential president for 8 years and it got us nowhere. Look at diplomatic relations under Obama. All of our enemies got stronger and we kicked all of our allies, especially Israel, square in the face. That was President Obama being presidential. That's what 8 years of bowing to the world and apologizing for America looks like. Well, the apology tour is over, and if your biggest issue with Trump is what he tweets, I think your little snowflake heart will be just fine. Trump is Trump, and I've got news for you. He's not changing. He's effective, and quite frankly, he gets a kick out of watching mainstream leftist media hacks lose their minds each time he lays down 280 characters. If the American people wanted a limp noodle in office, we would have voted for low-energy Jeb or full-blown Democrat John Kasich. Yet here we are. If Trump didn't tweet, half of you journalists would have to research real stories. So thank your lucky stars you just get to sit back and scroll through Twitter and wait to be offended. Those are my final thoughts from LA. God bless and take care.
Welcome back. This is Lou Benninger, Live with Lou, and we've been on here since 9. We're on for another hour and a half to noon. And if you just stumbled across this is the Patriot. We're out here on Mount Huth in eastern Yuba County. Linda, they call it. It's just, we're just above that cannabis cloud that's floating around out here in Linda. So you heard a clip there about building a wall and about people coming across. And one of the groups that has been coming across, and we played a clip earlier, is MS-13. It's a gang out of Central America. And a lot of the MS-13 people, you remember under Obama where all these quote-unquote children were coming in, unaccompanied children? A lot of those children were full-grown males, and they say about a third of them were MS-13 gang members. And they've settled all over the United States at this time. And so I just noticed this week's paper, a group of them cut the head off and the heart out of a guy. I believe it was in North Carolina. And I came into contact with the impact of MS-13 about, 12 years ago. I was working at the Church of Glad Tidings. And if people called in troubled, I would end up with the call. And a woman called. She was staying temporarily at the Casa de Esperanza, which is a home for women who have been battered. This woman had was from down south and in California, and had been got mixed up with the MS-13, and they wanted to. I guess she wanted to leave that, and they attempted to kill her, to stab her, and missed her and stabbed her infant and killed the infant. And so she was up with her. She had a child about, a female child about 8 or 9. And so she wanted help, and she was trying to change her identity. So I worked with her, and the government assisted her in changing her complete identity. Social Security, everything that you can imagine that connects you to this country. And so the MS-13 is a very serious, I know norteños, sereños, everything, but MS-13 is a gang that started in South America and now we're importing them. The Democrats are importing them to vote for them. And so it's a real situation to me because I know people, and I know her today and her daughter, who's now a grown woman, young woman. It's a real thing because they actually killed a family member of theirs. Now, maybe MS-13 is just a term to you, but it's a serious deal. And so when Donald Trump, the president, says we're going to get them and we're going after them, and MS-13 says, oh, you're hilarious. Well, we'll see. I get a kick out of these multi-millionaire football players and basketball players who play their sports in secure environments. Their stadiums, their arenas are not blowing up. Nobody's shooting at them. They don't give anybody any credit for that. They are not thankful to law enforcement or the military or the undercover people that are keeping threats to a minimum. In other words, there's always threats going on, and they're reacting to those to head off an actual attack. And so when you see these arenas with 15, 18,000 people, basketball arenas or football arenas with 50 to 100,000 people, and it happens peacefully nowadays, it's pretty significant because it hasn't happened peacefully everywhere. For instance, at the Boston Marathon. And all these guys are pretty, can just say, oh, yeah, Trump's a racist. Yeah, he's a racist. Obviously, they are liberals, and they have never owned businesses like Trump has and hired all kinds of flavors of people and probably put more women to work, more Mexicans to work, more blacks to work than most other employers in the United States. But they have the right to say whatever they want. But I get a kick out of the fact that they could be so full of bravado and like, oh, we're this and we're that. And all they do for a living is entertain people. They actually don't produce anything besides entertainment. They don't like fix a heart, fix a tire on a car, grow vegetables. They just run up and down a court or a field and get multi-millions of dollars, and then they can be disrespectful. And then they get all their panties in a bundle because the President of the United States says, I think you're disrespectful. Interesting. I want to talk to you just for a minute about an email I got this week that was forwarded to me, and I think not just to me, but to a number of people. And it was a writing from a guy named Dutch Sheets, who is among Christian circles, in some Christian circles in the United States. He's highly regarded, sharp guy. I've never met him, but I liked what he wrote, and I'm just going to highlight some things. It's called The Power of History. I want you to think about history because I think a lot of people in our nation today, and I'll just speak for, I'm a baby boomer. A lot of people in our nation have grown up we've never been attacked, except we were attacked here in 2001 with Al-Qaeda, but we've never had a war fought on our turf outside of us fighting one another. And we've had pretty peaceful, pretty prosperous times, even in the down times. And we've become pretty used to things just working out no matter who was in power. But now things are getting some gnarly. And a lot of people have gotten used to being lethargic and passive and couch potatoes. And they think even though this government was created as a participatory government, not one where you let people run it for you, so now we've kind of got a habit of being out of shape. And instead of taking on our local authorities or state authorities or federal authorities, we just kind of complain about it. So Dutch Sheets wrote this small column about the power of history. He says, the thought of shaping the world or the future is powerful, but past history is also very important. Karl Marx, remember I mentioned him earlier, M-A-R-X, Karl Marx, one of the philosophers that brought about communism. Marx said, if I can steal their history, I can steal their country. Now I want you to, when you think about all the changes and lies about our history, oh, well, he was a corrupt, he was a slave owner, he was, if a person in our history isn't perfect like Jesus was, then they're going to tear down his statue. Just like that's why I spent the time this morning to talk about the history of Thanksgiving, because that history has been stolen from us. Marx said, if I can steal their history, I can steal their country. Dutch Sheets says, roots are essential and powerful, and foundations are critical. And he talks about David and Goliath. Many people, if they haven't read that account, are somewhat familiar with it. But Goliath was the leading warrior for the Philistines. And Israel and the Philistines had ongoing conflicts. Philistines were idol worshipers and were violent and were ruthless, and the Israelites were God-fearers and were instructed to behave themselves according to the precepts that God gave them. So they were squared off to fight, and David and Goliath was threatening the Israelites, and they were all fearful, and they were frozen. They were freaked out. They had lost their will to fight, like a lot of you have. And David's father sent him he said, hey, go take these cheese sandwiches up to the guys and see if they need anything. And David was a youngster. And he got up there to the fight, and he was shocked that nobody was taking on this massive giant called Goliath. In other words, he was intimidating and he was threatening. And to look at it physically, he was outperforming. He could outperform them if you just looked at the physical thing. And David said an unusual phrase. He asked an unusual question. And he says, is there not a cause? Is there not a cause? I want you to think about that. Is there not a cause? I want you to ask yourself today, what would trigger me to kick some ass out there and get it on and fight the fight? What would trigger me? What would trigger you? What's going to push you over the edge? Anything? Are you just going to cave into everything and just kind of just passively go along? Is there, David, a youngster and not a warrior, said, is there not a cause? And in Hebrew, the word for cause actually means history. In other words, David's saying, hey, don't we remember our history? Why are we allowing this to go on? We know God, and we have a history of God performing amazing miracles for us. And in America, we have an amazing history where miracles have happened for this country to go from a very difficult start where people starved to death, over half the people starved to death, to one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful nation in the world, and one of the most generous nations, and one of the most evangelical nations in terms of sending out missionaries all over the world to help people understand who Jesus is. So David was asking his brothers and fellow Israelites, don't we have a history here that proves that we shouldn't even fear this guy? This is not a challenge we can't overcome. And he was asking, isn't this a fight worth fighting for? Isn't this a history or a cause worth fighting for? And I want to ask you today, isn't what our forefathers, my dad and uncle both fought in World War II. A lot of times I think I could find something better to do on Saturdays, but then I think about my dad and I think about my grandkids and I think, I'll do this. If I can convince some people to get up off their butt and do something, it's worth it. It's my small contribution, right? Is there not a cause? Yeah, there is a cause. Yeah, it is worth fighting for, and I'm not going to let some Marxist, communist, and socialists, including people you live next to and go and on our board of supervisors, they say they're Republican. Oh, I'm a conservative. Oh, I'm a this. But they act like Marxists. And so David challenged the unbelief. A lot of Americans are not believers. I'm not talking about they're not Christians. They're not believers in America. They don't even, all they want is just somebody to leave them alone, and they want their check to come in. David was saying, is there not a history of faithfulness from God that brings enough confidence to face what we're facing today? I mean, looking back, isn't there enough overcoming in America to encourage you to be part of it? It's like, oh, yeah, they could sacrifice. Some of my friends died in Vietnam. Oh, yeah, they could sacrifice, but I'm not willing to go through any discomfort. Not loss of life, discomfort. I'm not willing to support the police and the military. I'm not willing to go to a parade. I'm not willing to vote. I'm not willing to campaign for. So he was saying, hey, haven't God done some amazing things to give you confidence that you can put the whoop on this problem ahead of us, in front of us? You know, he was saying to them when he says, is there not a cause? It's like, don't you remember all the miracles that happened and all the things that God did for us? And when you look back at America and you really recently I have a lot of books at home and I pulled off this old history book of America. And I've been reading about the founding of America. I'm just starting through it. And it's been so amazing to all the amazing things that came together that these explorers would stumble across what we now call America. So David was saying, come on, man. Isn't there enough amazing, miraculous history with God to bring you the courage to face current problems like this giant. And so Dutch Sheets asked about Christian Americans. You know, he wasn't really addressing non-Christian Americans. And they may be very conservative. Just like my parents were not Christian, but they were very conservative. They were patriots. They were honest people. And he's saying, are there any Christian Americans out there that want to take on the spiritual giants in our land? Because the Bible teaches us that behind every practical or physical threat to us is a spiritual threat. It's all spiritual. And he asked, he said, don't we have history on our side? I mean, I want you to think about when the men and women of this country voluntarily joined to fight a World War II. And many of them thought, it wasn't like they were going for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years of duty and then go back to normal. It was like, you're going to fight and you're either going to die or you're going to win this war, and it'll take as many years as it takes. And you are a part of this. This is it. And you're either going to win or you ain't. But what Dutch Sheets says, there are anti-God forces today trying to rewrite American history. If you don't get that, you need to go back and read history. And let me help you with this. Maybe you should go on YouTube or on the website for Wall Builders with David Barton. Wall Builders with David Barton, and start looking at American history and getting a clue, because if you don't get what's happening now is Barack Obama type socialists, Marxists are trying to erase the godly heritage in this country. I've never been there, but I've seen series of photographs of all the scriptures engraved into the granite or concrete or on the walls inside courthouses back at the amazing, like the National Monument, Abraham Lincoln Memorial, et cetera, where there's scriptures plastered everywhere in this country. But Marxists have tried to say, oh, no, we weren't really Christian-based. It's just a lie. But until you inform yourself and you remain ignorant, you're going to get sucker punched, and your heritage is going to get stolen from you. The Founding Fathers declared their independence from England. When they did that, it just wasn't being rebellious. They acknowledged their dependence on God. The Pilgrims did so as well. And they believed God was going to come through for them, even though they made a bad start. You know, the Bible says man makes his plans, but God directs his steps. That's exactly what happened when they thought, oh, we'll do this communal thing, and God just says, you're going to die, and they quickly adjusted, and then they prospered. But Sheets says, we have a godly heritage in this nation that cannot be denied. It cannot be denied. But if you don't know what it is because you weren't taught that, and if you went to a government school, they scrubbed that out of there. The Founding Fathers were very aware that God himself was the author of their existence, and they stated very boldly their reliance on God to provide wisdom and leadership. I want you to think about how many stupid things are done by politicians. Obviously, they're not hearing from God. When you do something stupid repeatedly, you're definitely getting information from the dark side, because with Satan comes chaos. With God comes wisdom and great leadership. And some people made some great choices. They may not have been perfect people. Some of them may have had slaves. Some of them may have done other things, but the fact is God gave them wisdom and leadership. And by the way, if you listen to Chris Ann Hall's teachings on the Constitution, in the midst of the whole slave trade, it just didn't go on in America. It wasn't even started here. It was brought here. by other, by Europeans. But even in the midst of that, they created a constitution to eradicate that slave trade, and they did. The Declaration of Independence has 4 very clear references to God and concludes with these words: "And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." After signing that declaration, it's said that some of the signers wept, others bowed their heads in prayer. Samuel Adams rose and stated, "We have this day restored the sovereign, to whom alone men ought to be obedient." That means God. "He reigns in heaven, and from the rising to the setting sun, may his kingdom come." Dutch Sheet says, now that's a history to build on or a cause to fight for. I want to challenge you today as we come to the close of the second hour. What cause will motivate you to change up your life and to fight for this country? Because if you don't fight for it, I'm telling you, nobody's going to pinch hit for you. If you maybe you're 60, 70 years old and you think your days are done, but I don't know, do you have any kids? Do you have any grandkids? Do you have any nieces and nephews? You know what I don't want them to do with me? I don't want to say, well, wow, I wonder how come Lou didn't do something about that. He could have done something about it. I wonder how come they just let this wonderful thing go to pot. When you look at all the terrible situations we have going on in this country, and our school system has really been taken over by Marxists. We're not taught proper history. We got politicians that are perverts taking us into millions and millions of dollars in debt and giving money away to people that won't work. It's a total mess. It can change, but not without your participation. We'll be right back. And for another hour, this is Live with Lou. All right. We're into our last hour here. This is Lou Benninger, Live with Lou, here with Santos Vigil. And we're finishing up 3 hours today from 9 to noon. And I wanted to mention for those that just dropped in the middle of this that we're sponsored by the Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots. And they wanted me to let you know, by the way, if you're listening from other than Yuba and Sutter County, you probably have a Sutter Buttes or a Tea Party, your version of Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots up in your area, hopefully. If not, you could travel down and get in on this, whether you're a farmer, trucker, businessman, or just a property owner. On December 4th, 2 Mondays from now, they're going to have an attorney from Sacramento, Jeremy Talcott. He's with the Pacific Legal Foundation, and his emphasis is property rights. And if you've done much reading about the foundation of our success as a country and the rights that you have, your property rights, that's key. Property is key. If we do not have our rights to property and the government can take our rights away, that's a major problem. And that will be on our undoing. So they're having Jeremy come and give a talk, and they're also going to do a raffle, a gun ammunition raffle that night. So it starts at 6:30. You can get there anywhere from 6 to 6:30 and get in early. There's some refreshments. You don't have to be a member or even want to join. You could just come and dip into this speaker if you want, and it's totally fine. You could check more about the Sutter Buttes Tea Party by going to sbtpp.org. That's PP like Party Patriots. sbtpp.org. And if you need any more information, and they meet at Church of Glad Tidings campus at 1179 Eager Road. Some people call that Yuba City. Some people call it Live Oak. It's about 3 minutes north of the Yuba City Mall on 99. You can just start right there where they got the new Panera Bread place and go out 99, about 3 minutes, get off at Eager Road. Eager Road at 99. It's right there on the freeway. Very easy to get in and out of. It's building 200. And go out there and get involved and become aware of your rights and find out from a person that's not going to charge you a nickel, is going to give you good advice, and where we are as a country and what we need to fight for. Okay? The other organization that helps us here is Monty Hecker's Elite Universal Security, or what I call Elite Security, and they're based out of here, but they also are operating up and down the valley, Chico, Redding, and they not only provide security services for businesses and government, but they also train people. So you can not work for them if you don't want to. They have jobs available, by the way. If you're interested in a job, you could give them a call at 749-0280, 749-0280, or you could go to their website and check out all the job opportunities they have and the classes they have coming up. And that's at elite, ELITE, API-academy.com. elite.api-academy.com. And they do all kinds of classes. So if you're a youngster, you can start taking classes there at 18 years of age, and you may end up wanting to work for them part-time while you go to school, or work for them full-time. But you could take all kinds of classes that are helpful to being a security guard or going into law enforcement. Handcuff training, taser training, pepper spray training, guard training, firearms training, de-escalation of force training, annual security card certification. So great opportunity, jobs. I'm telling you, there's jobs all over the place around here. Everybody I'm talking to is working their rear offs right now and making a lot of money. So if you're young, you're just getting out of high school, you're wondering, I don't know what to do. In fact, Monty is retired from the military. Maybe he would help you even think about going into the military. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, I want to give the president, a lot of people are just finding all kinds of reasons to hate the president. And, I've been through a lot of presidents, both Democrat and Republican, and I've always tried to respect the presidency. And there's something unique going on right now. When you have, before the president even is inaugurated, you have them saying it's a corrupt election, the Russians corrupted it, this is not my president. I've never seen, I can't remember any riots and burning of cars and breaking windows at any other president. It sounds like something that happened in South America or something, right? Or Indonesia. But I just like a lot of the things President Trump is doing. Because I've never worked for government, I've always worked in business. I like the fact when people are able to make a dollar, business is really hard to run. I like it when businesses make money or have plenty of business. People can get a job, they can work hard, they can get a check, they can take care of their family, they can take them out to eat, they can buy them groceries and groceries and clothing and whatever they need to take care of their children. I think people are healthier that way, they're happier that way, and when the economy's good, that's great. Government does not create jobs. Government actually takes away jobs. It actually takes money out of the economy through taxes and wastes money. The best thing the government can do is get out of the way. I like what Trump's done. The stock market has never been higher. The unemployment rate hasn't been, it's the lowest since 2000, before Obama took office. So there's some things to be thankful for with President Trump, whether you like him or not. If your job's doing good, if you have a job, that's something to be thankful for. Lots of people don't have jobs around the world. I like the fact that he reduced at one point, I can't speak for today, but at one point it takes so many employees to run the White House. He reduced that by 110 employees. You think, oh, that's not very much. Well, if you multiply that times $40,000 to $100,000 per person, depending on the job they had, that's quite a bit, right? I get a kick out of people that say, if there's any cuts and they're not just massive, they think, oh, well, that doesn't make any difference. Oh, that's not enough. Well, I'll tell you, if you work on your own budget and you can cut a bit here and a bit there, pretty soon you have more money to do other stuff with. Melania, she only used 4 staff people versus Michelle Obama's 24 staff people. That's significant, I think, right? That's less of your tax dollars being wasted to manage and run a bureaucracy, right? And do you know that Trump not only didn't take a salary, he doesn't take a salary and spend it. He lives on his own income from his past business dealings. But he contributed his salary or directed his salary to the Department of Interior. That's about $400,000, I think. And it wasn't just to bolster the budget of the Department of Interior, but it's being used to specifically repair cemeteries for veterans. Pretty cool, huh? So Donald Trump has done his best, I think, to repair the damage that the Obama administration had done to our care of veterans, living and dead and retired, and also law enforcement, living, dead, retired. And I think he's doing a good job at that. The other thing, I mentioned the economy. Many, many companies are coming back to the United States. Manufacturing is resurgent. What's that? Those just aren't terms. Those are jobs. The entire coal industry, which was shut down under Obama and was going to be further shut down under Hillary, those guys are going back to work. Those jobs are paying $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, those coal mining jobs. And entire towns, just like one judge shut down the entire West Valley of farming in the Central California, and entire towns, and those are all Democrat voters, by the way. Those are primarily Mexican folks out there that were managing and running those farms for corporations. Those farms are shut down. The trees were shoved over because they wouldn't provide water to those areas anymore. So it affected real people. Real people lost their jobs, lost their career, had to leave the area. Trump is actually creating situations that are allowing business to flourish. What I got a kick out of is they have gone through and removed regulations that business has to labor under that saved businesses hundreds of millions of dollars to comply with. Now, I've managed businesses before in my life and had to comply with whether it's been farming regulations or painting regulations and dealing with hazardous waste and all that stuff, chemicals. Honestly, people, it's the amount of regulations is killing this country. I don't know whether you remember, just another kudos for Trump. I don't know whether you remember Obama being asked about what he's going to do about ISIS, and do you remember him saying that they were still searching for a strategy about ISIS? I would just like to thank the President administration for not lacking a strategy on ISIS. What you do with people like this is you kill them. And the U.S.-backed militias in the Middle East declared total liberation of Raqqa, R-A-Q-Q-A. If you haven't seen Raqqa, you should Google it on your computer, Raqqa, R-A-Q-Q-A. This was a massive city this wasn't a village, this was a massive metropolitan area with multi-story buildings throughout, concrete buildings, that's totally destroyed by ISIS. This was the de facto capital of ISIS. Anyway, the other thing is that Neil Gorsuch, was found and put up for confirmation to the United States Supreme Court. That was successful. And many other federal judges now are being prepared to be put into office. That it isn't whether they were conservative or what flavor they are for me. It's just that they follow the Constitution. We don't need judges that think they're going to be the legislature or the executive branch. What we need judges to do is just confirm that an issue is lawful. That's all we need. And the rest of it they can they can pretend at home. So the other thing, I don't know whether you remember this during the campaign with Trump. There were all these federal employees that said, if he wins, we're quitting. Do you remember that? They said they think up to 25% of them will quit. Well, actually, that's a blessing, because even though they didn't quit, they were liars, like a lot of the Hollywood people said, we're moving to Canada. They really didn't. And so, but the fact is, I just read where Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, is reducing the budget by, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars, something like 18% of the Secretary of State's bloated budget. Now, when you hear the media or Congress say, "Oh, well, we can't operate by less than that," I want you to just look at the bloated government. Look up some of these agencies. I think I don't know whether they have 45,000 employees or 35,000. I mean, these agencies are massive, massive agencies. And to think you can't go in and cut these agencies and cut the fluff out is crazy. But anyway, they are shrinking government. I don't know whether you've watched all these Caltrans workers walk around Marysville, union office workers from the Palace over here on B Street, but the analyst's office in the state of California said there were 3,500 too many architects and engineers over there at Caltrans. And I just heard from a Caltrans worker the other day that with SB1, they're not going to lay anybody off. They're going to hire 200 more. So that's just what you get for government. I want to play a clip here. You got that over there hanging around? This is a Prager University clip on the national anthem. I think it'll get your attention.
The national anthem stands for freedom, even the freedom to do foolish things, like protesting the national anthem. But like my mama always said, just because you are free to do the wrong thing, it doesn't mean you should. Starting in 2016, some professional football players have refused to stand when the national anthem is played before a game. Some of them kneel, some of them sit on the bench, some of them raise their fist, and some don't even come out of the locker room. This was all started by San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick. His idea was to protest the alleged mistreatment of black people by police and by America in general. As he put it, "I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color." Kaepernick no longer plays in the league because apparently NFL owners are racist against backup quarterbacks who don't throw well. But his protest lives on and has spread to college and high school athletes. Even elementary school kids have gotten into the act. I like football, and I sing the anthem publicly at events. This doesn't make me an expert, but I've got a problem with some things here. First, the protest is based on something that just isn't true. And second, even if it were true, the protest is misdirected and self-defeating. Let's start with problem one. Despite what we're told by Black Lives Matter and their media allies, the police are not engaged in a coordinated campaign to destroy the black race. As Harvard professor Roland Fryer, who happens to be black, and others have shown, there is no evidence of racial bias in police shootings. In any case, the thing that makes headlines, police shootings of unarmed black men, is very rare. How rare? Statistics show that an unarmed black man is more likely to be killed by lightning than a policeman. So if police are trying to persecute black folks, They're doing a really bad job. Am I saying racism doesn't exist? Of course not. Am I saying racist cops don't exist? Of course not. But I would say this. Blacks have a lot more to fear from black criminals than from the police. The police keep us safe, and they risk their lives every day doing it. That sounds like it's a lot more deserving of a thank you than a screw you. Now, problem 2. The protest is misdirected and self-defeating. The American flag and the national anthem are symbols that represent our country. Even if some police officers are racist jerks, it doesn't make sense to protest those particular jerks by demonstrating against the country as a whole. Martin Luther King Jr. protested discrimination against blacks on city buses by boycotting city buses. He never denigrated the flag or the anthem. In fact, he did the opposite. He argued that the people who oppress blacks are the ones denigrating the flag and what it stands for. And what does it stand for? Ironically, it's the protesters themselves who give us the answer. It stands for freedom. The fact that you can disrespect the anthem and the flag proves that you're free. Anyone who doesn't stand for the anthem would do themselves a favor if they studied some current events. They'd learn that oppressive countries don't allow anyone to publicly disrespect national symbols, much less earn millions of dollars while doing it. You won't see anyone sitting for their national anthem in North Korea or Iran. Well, you might, but that will be the last time you see them. Which brings me to my final point. In America, where you are free to sit or stand during the national anthem, sitting when you should be standing is more a statement about you than about America. And you don't come off too well. You come off, frankly, as ignorant and ungrateful. Ignorant about a country that works to correct its faults, and ungrateful for the opportunity and freedom that it offers all its citizens. For that, I'm standing. How about you? I'm Joy Villa for Prager University.
All right. Well, I hope that dials in, refreshes your perspective on the anthem. And I want to go on now and start a topic that I'll finish after the break. But one thing that happened, I believe this last week, is that after over 60 years of injustice, President Trump reversed what they call the Lyndon Johnson Amendment. Lyndon Johnson was vice president under John Fitzgerald Kennedy when he was assassinated, and so Lyndon Johnson took over for Kennedy as designed in our Constitution. So, but before Johnson was vice president, Johnson was a politician from Texas, and he was involved in a difficult race in he was trying to get reelected to be a senator, and he was involved in a challenging race and in 1954, and he was feeling threatened because of a movement of black people who were conservative. If you remember that it was the liberals that started the Ku Klux Klan, and it was the liberals who withstood civil rights and wanted to keep the blacks in their place. And so black churches were leaning to vote against Lyndon Johnson's opponent. And to shut down the effectiveness of the black churches, Johnson got an amendment added to a bill that we now know as the Johnson Amendment, which curbed the free speech of churches and pastors. In other words, if they spoke about politics in the pulpit, they could lose their 501c3 exemption from paying taxes on the income that they brought in, the donations they brought in, and if they lost the exemption, technically, people donating to them could also lose their deductions. So again, it's kind of laying down the idea that the government, your money is really not your money, but it's the government's money, and they're going to take some from you each year. And the fact that they're doing churches a favor by churches basically are just groups of people that pool their money together to accomplish something, right? That money that's being given to churches has already been taxed, generally, in some ways. And people have earned that money and have a right to do with it what they want. So they were going to remove the deduction of spent that you don't, when you donate money, you don't get 100% deduction. You just get a portion of that deducted off your income tax. So anyway, Johnson tried to muzzle basically pastors. Now, if you study the Revolution, the American Revolution against England, you'll notice, if you read the right books, that pastors were some of the leading spokespeople to stand up for liberty and freedom and to revolt. And so this was a new thing of putting a muzzle on churches. So that's exactly what he did. And so if you spoke out, in fact, under President Clinton, a church out in the East Coast somewhere, can't remember the city, they took a full-page ad out and notified people that President Clinton was pro-abortion. For doing that, they lost their tax-exempt status. So what this did is curb the speech. You know, the Constitution protects our speech. And so Johnson won his election. He returned to the Senate, and then he was nominated and became the vice president with Kennedy, and then he became the president. So this last week, President Trump ended that and basically said, hey, you're in the pulpit. You have a right to free speech. So we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes.
Carter thought his life was over when he landed in jail. What he didn't know was that all the pieces of an intricate puzzle had come together for just such a time. This Christmas, experience the great love that motivates such planning and purpose to reach each and every one of us. Creative Light Theater presents the original modern musical, The Ripple Effect, featuring a powerhouse cast of 16 actors and 15 original songs that pulse with passion and reveal the deepest thoughts of people in crisis. This musical drama shows the purpose in suffering and grants us a glimpse of what goes on in the heart of God. The Ripple Effect world premiere is December 8th through 12th, 7 p.m. nightly, at the Embassy Theater at Glad Tidings, Highway 99 and Eager Road in Yuba City. Admission is free. Experience the epic lengths God will go to for the love of one person.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Like me, you're reeling from the horrible tragedy at First Baptist Church in Texas. The shooter's rampage killed 26 people. The youngest victim was an unborn child. An additional 20 people were injured. What lurks in the heart of a mass killer? The assailant had professed to be an atheist. Lately, we've seen far too many tragedies like this. It's a reflection America desperately needs Jesus. Far too many in our nation look to earthly things to encourage, uplift, and satisfy them. Without Jesus in our hearts, these things will disappoint us every time. Please be in prayer for the wounded. Pray for the families and friends of all those affected. Please also be in fervent prayer for our nation, that the Holy Spirit will move among us and Jesus will reign in the hearts of mankind.
Follow us on Twitter at Life Issues USA and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
That there are, for immigrants on the whole,
Come on, try getting it out. Try getting it out.
I'll get it out.
I mean, I don't know if you're going to put this on television, but you don't even know what you're talking about. Try getting it out. Go ahead.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account.
Only
has
Rosie
several-
O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there. That I can tell you. But Jake,
I want to give.
They came to me, the press, these people. Look at all those cameras back there. The press came to me, and they told me that he said he would not pay for the wall. Do you have a comment? I said, yes. The wall just got 10 feet taller.
Oh, Don, you're a little controversial. You're talking about illegal immigration. I said, it's illegal. We have very stupid people in our country negotiating for us, and we have leaders that don't know what they're doing.
And the media, look at all those people back there. Scavengers, they're like scavengers. CNN is terrible. CNN, you're with CNN? Are you with CNN? Are you people do not cover us accurately at all. Go ahead.
To follow up on that, you keep calling us the dishonest press, the disgusting
Well,
press.
generally speaking, that's 100% true. Go ahead.
I disagree with that, sir. And if I can ask you this question, it seems as though you're resistant to scrutiny, the kind of scrutiny that comes with running for president of the United States.
I
You're
like
saying
scrutiny, but you know what? When I raise money, excuse me, I've watched you on television. You're a real beauty.
Is that appropriate in running for president?
Okay, you got to let me speak, though, Frank, because you interrupt all the time, okay? So, let me talk quiet. A lot of times, that's all of his donors and special interests out there. It's been an amazing journey for me. It's been a lot of fun. I never thought I'd be a politician in my life. He said I'm not. I guess you're right. I'm not. I refuse. We need a leader that wrote The Art of the Deal. I'll use the word anchor baby. Excuse me. I'll use the word anchor baby.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.
He was begging for my endorsement. I could have said, Mitt, drop to your knees. He would have dropped to his knees. He was begging. Who is Uma married to? One of the great sleazebags of our time. Anthony Weiner. Did you know that? She's married to Anthony Weiner. You know, the little bing, 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 bum, bum. I love you very much.
I want to get paid the same as a man, and I think you understand that. So, if you become president, will a woman make the same as a man, and do I get to choose what I do with my body?
You're going to make the same if you do as good a job.
Stop it.
This socialist / communist, okay? Nobody wants to say it.
What the financials don't show also is your tax rate. They don't show whether you paid a low tax rate or no tax rate.
I fight very hard to pay as little tax as possible, and I've said that for the last 2 years. I fight very hard because this country wastes our money. They take our tax money and they throw it down the drain because, frankly, our country doesn't know what they're doing with our money or our tax money, and that's part of the problem. So I fight very hard to pay as little tax as possible.
What is your tax rate?
It's none of your business. You'll see it when I release it.
I say it only because that's the kind of thinking this country needs with $19 trillion in debt, believe me.
They spent, listen to this, $1 million on ads against me in Iowa. Now, here's the good news. They used the best pictures. I look so good in those pictures. I'm trying to find where they got them. But I was like a young guy. I looked so handsome. I said to myself, oh, I wish I still looked like that. It would be great.
Newsflash, the Republican Party's been fighting against a single-payer system for a decade. So I think you're on the wrong side of this if you're still arguing for a single-payer system.
I don't think you heard me. You're having a hard time tonight.
All right,
This is a tough business to run for president.
I know. You're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is real tough. You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3. So far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. Crooked Hillary. She was the worst Secretary of State in the history of our nation. Why would she be a good president? I think she'd be a terrible president.
You know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
We're back for a few more minutes here, and then I think we got some sports talk guys coming in behind us. Hey, I wanted to mention to you about a good thing that you can get involved in that Jeff and Cherie Stevens are doing at Stevens Farmhouse. They're friends of mine, and I think they know a lot of you people out there. They're good people, and they're always trying to help where they can. Jeff was a tip volunteer, trauma intervention with me for 4 years. And when people are tip volunteers, they learn a lot. One of the things they learn is how wonderful our law enforcement is, even if they thought they were wonderful already. In fact, I wouldn't let a person in tip that thought they had a bad attitude towards law enforcement or fire or the hospital. But their view and respect and esteem of law enforcement goes way up because they get to see how gnarly the situations are and what amazing work that law enforcement does and fire. But Jeff and Cherie, who make thousands of pies each year, tens of thousands of pies, wanted to do a law enforcement pie day. In other words, they decided we're going to give a pie to every law enforcement official that wants one. And they started out in Yuba Sutter counties, and now they've spread to Yuba Sutter, Butte, and Colusa counties. And so they asked our help. In other words, if you contribute $10 to their cause, Law Enforcement Pie Day, then on December 17th, on a Sunday, they're going to hand off all these pies, over 1,200 of them, to law enforcement folks from these 4 counties. And they're also going to cook breakfast over at the Veterans Center in Sutter County in Yuba City at Butte House Road and Civic Center Boulevard. So let me tell you, I'm gonna buy 10 of them, and $100. It's no big deal. I think that's a good investment in saying thank you to a bunch of sheriff's deputies, cops, probation officers, juvenile hall people, stuff like that. So. So anyway, what you can do is you can call them at Stevens Farmhouse at 673-0406, and I'm sure they got a slick way that you can do this, or just send them a check. It's 6219 Sawtell, Sawtell. I think it might have an E on it, but either way it'll get there. Yuba City, 95991, Sawtell Road, Sawtelle Road, 6219 Sawtell. Or I'm sure they can just swipe your card over the phone, and they could do it that way. Or you could stop by there. If you go out 99, go towards Sacramento on 99 south of Yuba City, you'll see them on the right. You could just drop in there and write them a check, and they'll take care of it from there. The other day, I was talking about pumpkin or pies in Stevens Farmhouse, and I mentioned pumpkin pie and how good it was because we had a couple at the tip training the other night. And so one of my friends dropped me by a Stevens Farmhouse pumpkin pie with a whole tube of, what do they call that? Whipped cream. And I ate the whole pie, just ate it all by myself. And man, that was good. You like pumpkin pie? Come on, man. Santos Slice. We should get one, bring it out here. Pumpkin pie. Can you beat it? Unbelievable. They make good pumpkin pie at Stevens Farmhouse. So listen, if you haven't said thank you to law enforcement, I know some of you drop goodies by. We drop tip. I just spoke at Marysville Police Department. I was briefing them, the new police officers, on tip, and I took them Cookie Tree cookies. Cookie Tree has given tip cookies once a week for years and years to give out to law enforcement and fire departments and the hospital, and we just say thank you from tip and the Cookie Tree. So anyway, the Cookie Tree has been helping us, and so we dropped those off at Marysville the other night when I spoke there. But you can be, it's just such a nice thing to get a pie, just a free pie. Said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you very much. So Stevens Farmhouse, $10 per pie. And they do all the other work, all the coordination. They're even going to feed all of them free at the Veterans Center that morning. So check that out. That's something you can get involved in. I wanted to play a clip that I was supposed to play last. Did you keep that over? We were supposed to play this last time. You know, there's this feeling that black boys are failures, and that in the inner city, none of them want to do any good except sling drugs and get girls pregnant. And I want to tell you that there's some amazing stuff going on, not in the public education system, but in the private system, where people are taking the bull by the horns in Christian efforts and even non-Christian efforts, where they just are private type schools, charter type schools, where kids are challenged. So check this out. All right. Well, I hope that's encouraging to you. That is to me. I've done studying on that. Would happen to be in Mississippi. Mississippi's a cool state. I drove through there many years ago, but it's the poorest state in the union. But as the fellow said on the clip, it has the highest giving percentages of any state in the union. And that doesn't mean they give the most dollars, but the highest percentage. It reminded me of the widow's mite story in the Bible where Jesus was watching people give money in the synagogue, and then he pointed to the people that had a lot of money, and he said, see that woman over there? And they said, yeah, so what? And he said, she's actually gave more than you all. And they thought, well, she's just a poor woman. And he said, she gave more than you all because she gave all that she had. So that's what's going on in Mississippi. Isn't that cool that even though people don't have a lot and they have their priorities right, they care for other people. So I wanted to make a few comments. We just have a few minutes left here about. I wrote an article in the Territorial Dispatch, two of them, one on Marysville and then one about senior citizens, and it's in the Territorial Dispatch. You can go online at territorialdispatch.biz and you can read them. Just click on current issue once you get there. So I wrote an article on senior citizens in Yuba County, and I just several years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there was some supervisors on the supervisor board for Yuba County that started to talk about that they wanted to build the senior citizens of Yuba County a building, and they never did get around to it. But they put them over into some old buildings that. And they paid for their way over there and out of our taxpayer dollars. You know, when politicians always pay people's way, they never pay out of their own pocket, whether they talk about the homeless or whatever. They always talk about how compassionate they are, and we need to be compassionate. Then they take your money and my money, and they spend that money. And the senior citizens situation when we say senior citizens of Yuba County, it's not all the senior citizens. Most senior citizens have plenty to do and find their own activities and don't need a center of their own. It's just like at one time in America, we didn't have daycare centers. Children stayed with their parents all day. They stayed with mom and dad, and that was the daycare centers. There weren't paid daycare centers. So these seniors got put in a vacant building across from Juvenile Hall, and then when they wanted to tear that building down, the county, they tried to get the seniors out, and they squawked and cried and threw a fit, and then they rented a building from the County Office of Education in Olivehurst. They stayed there for a few years, and then when the County Office of Education, of which I know something about this because I was serving on the school board at that time, we decided to get rid of surplus property that we weren't effectively using anymore and put the money to good use. Our job was to educate kids, not to own a lot of real estate. So when we said we were going to sell the building, they threw a big fit like we owed them something, or the government owed them, or the county owed them, or somebody owed them, God owed them, somebody owed them. And so now the building is finally going to be sold. I'm no longer on the board over there, but to me it was a typical example of government bureaucrats and politicians finding cool ways to spend somebody else's money. And the fact is that most senior citizens are involved in all kinds of other organizations, from seniors in retirement to Kiwanis to Rotary to Lions to Moose Lodge to Elks Lodge to veterans organizations to churches, and they have a full life, and they don't need a senior center to be paid for by other taxpayers. Now, these seniors, I heard, are planning to rent a building in downtown Marysville. To me, great. Or if they don't want to, great. Who cares? You know, people get together in America, at least we used to, and if a group of people decided to do something, whether they wanted a bowling league or a basketball league, or they wanted to have a shooting range, they just simply got together, they put their money together, they raised money, and they did it. And they didn't ask the government for a handout, or like these art groups. So you have local art groups, and they say, we want an art gallery and we want an art association, and then we want the government to pay for it. Well, what if I don't like their art? Or I don't like the type of art they do? Why should I, as a taxpayer, have to pay for that? My feeling is all those things ought to be private. If people want an art gallery and they want to charge to go to it or not charge or whatever they want to do, raise money, do whatever you want. If I like the art, if I like the music they're putting on, I'll go to it. If I don't, I won't. So it's just like a hamburger place. If you want to put certain things on a hamburger and that's the only way you're going to make them, I'll eat it or I won't. So you have a choice. So the seniors, if they want to have a building, they have a right to have a building. They can raise money, and it could be successful or not. They could flourish and expand, or they can close. Either way is fine with me and should be okay with everybody. Businesses open and close every day. Businesses go out of business. The folks retire. They don't sell it. They close the doors, or they get tired of running it, or they don't make enough money, or they don't appeal. What they're selling doesn't appeal to enough people, and they close. That's the way our government and our culture, our economy works, and it works very well when it's allowed to function that way, and we don't try to prop up poorly run programs or unprofitable programs or programs that are not effective. Government is the one that runs programs on and on from generation to generation, regardless of whether they're effective or not. And the reason they keep doing it is it's called white collar welfare. You just prop up something that never did work right in the first place. And so to me, the whole issue of senior centers or youth centers or whatever paid for by government are loser ideas. They're socialist ideas. Government should take care of protecting us with police, law enforcement, et cetera, fire, roads, if we want to have some sort of oversight on how those roads, whether we subcontract out, like right now they're building a new Fifth Street Bridge. And so we designed that, but they're going to hire that out and subcontract that to make a new bridge and make it more functional for our residents. The government needs to stay out of all the other stuff. But what's happened is we've now become sort of trained to when we need a few bucks, we just go to government and ask for a handout. The problem is it's not their money. It's not the politicians' money. It's not the supervisors' money. It's not the senators' money. It's our money. And it should be restricted on what's going now. A majority of what's going on financially in our government is entitlement programs, welfare programs. It isn't even in the Constitution, nor were education programs. So anyway, you can read about that. I happen to be a senior citizen, but I would never be in favor of the government picking up the tab, nor do I think government should pay for daycare. People should take care of their own kids. If they have kids, they ought to take care of their own kids however they want to take care of them. They take care of them. Granny takes care of them. Auntie takes care of them. Their friend takes care of them. If there's a private daycare, they have to take care of them. The bottom line is people need to just take care of their own business. So we're winding down here. I just want to remind you this week that pay attention to who you run into and treat them kindly, because you never know. The Bible says that you might be entertaining an angel and not even knowing it. So we'll see you. We'll be back next week.